on all of that. But I have to start off with an NFL topic because obviously we are approaching the start of training camp. It hasn't begun officially. It starts at the end of July, but there are some interesting storylines to keep track of. And I think that one of the most important ones to take a look at is with the Cleveland Browns and obviously their quarterback situation. Because Deshaun Watson, right now, the NFL is pushing to suspend Deshaun Watson indefinitely. We all know that because of the allegations of sexual misconduct filed by, at the time, it was 24 different women. Now, 20 of those suits have been settled, 4 remain, and he's having official hearings on Tuesday. So the Browns are in this situation where who do they start at quarterback to begin the year? And really, what we should expect to be the entire season. They signed Jacoby Brissett in the offseason, and by all indications, the Browns have come out and said that they are likely to roll with Jacoby Brissett and not Baker Mayfield as the starting quarterback if Deshaun Watson gets suspended. Now, here is the dilemma for the Cleveland Browns. The problem for the Cleveland Browns is this is a roster that is built to contend now. It's constructed to win now. They're not building for the future. When you've got players like Nick Chubb, who was second in the NFL in rushing yards last year, and Kareem Hunt, and the talent and the depth of talent that they have on that roster, you can't afford to add one more additional year of tread on those tires. That's first of all. So this team is built to win right now. And not to mention they're competing in a loaded AFC and specifically AFC North division. When you've got a team like the Cincinnati Bengals who just won the division last year, who reached the Super Bowl. The Ravens were 8-3 last year with Lamar, who was healthy at the time before he ended up getting injured and he contracted COVID. And that was the rest of that season for the Ravens. They began the year 8-3. They were absolutely sensational. And the Steelers, listen, obviously, they're not nearly as highly touted as they've been in the past. Ben Roethlisberger just retired. But this is still a Mike Tomlin-led Pittsburgh Steelers team that you know is going to be well coached. They're going to be disciplined. They're not going to make many mistakes. And though they might be limited offensively, they're going to compete, and they're going to give you a game. So there are no easy victories, obviously, in that division. And then, of course, in the actual AFC, you can look at all 4 teams in the AFC West just as a start with the Chiefs and the Raiders and the Broncos and the Chargers. You've got the Bills, you got the Patriots. Who knows what Miami, how they're going to look with Tua, and they traded for Hill. So the AFC is absolutely stacked. So the Browns aren't in a position where they just want to simply waste away a season. And right now, here's the problem. Mayfield is technically still on the roster. He's technically a viable option to be the starting quarterback, but obviously he has no intention of playing for the Browns given the fact that, well, they traded for Deshaun Watson. They went behind his back, and he feels betrayed. And he feels like the bridge has been burned. There is no longer any trust there. But the problem for the Browns is, yes, you brought in a capable backup in Jacoby Brissett, who's in his 6th season or in 6 years in the NFL. He has started 37 games. He is 14-23 as the starting quarterback in his NFL playing career. So he's the perfect kind of leak patch to just patch things up well enough where the ship doesn't sink, but he's not good enough to necessarily buoy and carry this type of team or really carry any franchise. And that's not a knock on Jacoby Brissett. There are only a handful of guys in the NFL who are good enough at the quarterback position to be able to do that. I don't even think there are 20. Maybe there are 15 guys that are capable of doing it. So it's not any form of disrespect to say that about Jacoby Brissett. That's just the reality of the situation. And so with that in mind, I think there's a lot of irony and potential for poetic justice here, because the irony is, as much animosity as Baker Mayfield probably harbors towards the Cleveland Browns organization, and as much as he feels like he's been betrayed and there's a lack of trust and support between he and the organization, and all this hostility that he probably harbors and that's pumping through his veins. The irony is, this may be a golden opportunity for him to transform his image and redefine who he is and redefine how the rest of his NFL playing career will unfold. Because last year, he was battling, obviously, a litany and a multitude of injuries that made him look like a shell of himself. To his credit, he never publicly complained. He never publicly made any excuses about the injuries. He just went out and he performed at the best of his ability. But we know he was dealing with a torn labrum in his shoulder basically since the second week of the season, among a slew of other things. And yet, despite that, what we know is a healthy Baker Mayfield would truthfully be the better option as the starting quarterback than Jacoby Brissett. That's the reality, because he's a more talented individual player than Jacoby Brissett. This was the number one pick in the draft in Baker Mayfield. So he would be the better option, and perhaps both sides can come to a compromise. Perhaps they can each sit down and Baker will be like, hey, okay, I'll be willing to play for your organization, for the Browns organization, under my fifth and final rookie contract, year in my rookie contract. And in exchange, perhaps the Browns can kind of cater to Baker a little bit. Maybe they can make more accommodations, maybe make more accommodations with his family, with some access, who knows, whatever those potentials are. Perhaps that's how the two can hash this out, because I do think that it works out for both sides. And what a story it would be if Baker Mayfield could come back and lead the Browns to a Super Bowl, because they have the roster to do it, to go from a once castaway, lame duck quarterback to now the savior, to the guy who can come in and resurrect not only his career, but the franchise, almost this type of redemptive story, this kind of Shawshank redemption. It would be beautiful to watch. And I think that he is liked within that locker room amongst the players. I know that he liked the guys on the team. I think he's well liked enough to the point where they would rally around him for one more year, that they would buy into him for one more year. Again, do I see this necessarily playing out? No, I don't think that he has any intention of playing for the Browns organization ever again. But I'm just looking at this roster, and you're taking a look at the talent that they have. One of the best backfields in the NFL, as I mentioned, with Chubb and Kareem Hunt. You just traded for Amari Cooper at the wide receiver position. Yes, you lost Jarvis Landry, but you still have Donovan Peoples-Jones. You still have David Njoku at the tight end position. One of the best offensive lines, if not the best offensive line in the NFL. Elite defensive players. Myles Garrett has already won Defensive Player of the Year before. You still have Jadeveon Clowney. You've got playmakers in the secondary with Denzel Ward and John Johnson III. Kevin Stefanski is a hell of a coach. I think he's proving to be one of the up-and-coming bright minds in the NFL. This is a really, really good roster. And again, I see Brissett likely being the starting quarterback, but personally, if I'm the Browns, I'd much rather have Baker Mayfield be the starting quarterback. And I think that even for Baker, if he can again manage to set aside his personal feelings about the Browns organization, it could be a win-win. Again, I don't expect it to happen, but man, what a story that would be if Baker could take over.